Welcome to the Interior Design Beat podcast, where you will hear candid commentary on various interior design subjects and topics, including the good, the bad, and the ugly, telling you like it really is. Hello, this is Steve Adamko. Welcome to another episode of the Interior Design Beat podcast. And today I'm going to have just an impromptu talk about the process that I go through when I do interior design. Now, when someone calls me, I like to go through some discussion, let them talk about what kind of project they have, what they are endeavoring to do, if they've ever worked with a professional interior designer before or not. That does make a difference. If they haven't worked with an interior designer before, I like to give them a little synopsis of what a real professional designer does, because a lot of people have gotten hold of decorators and maybe other designers that aren't nearly as good as they thought they were, and what have you, because you never know what kind of background or experience they've had in the past. So it's nice to get a little bit of background history to see what they've been through or not. So I prefer to let them talk for a while, describe the project, what they're looking to achieve, what kind of family they have pets, they have hobbies, all that type of thing. And then I'll usually cap it off by telling them how I work and the procedure and what separates me from a lot of the other people out there. So I let them know that, my design is predicated on them, the client, and it's also based on the look and the feeling and the ambiance. So I like to let them know that what I do is predicated on the look, the feeling, and the emotion as it relates to their personalities, letting them know that the whole process spins off of them as the pivot point, along with the architecture or the home that they're in, and then me working along with them, putting myself in their shoes, doing it with my expertise. So I really like to let them know up front, so this is not going to be like other experiences they have had in the past, if any. I also like to inform them that I'm going to be asking them a lot of questions, probably questions that they have never been asked before, as well as asking them questions the depth that they've never been asked before. So I like to kind of equate it to archaeology in that we're digging out the hidden treasure that is, for the most part, unbeknownst to the client because they've never thought about this process very deeply. I mean, they have maybe superficially and maybe a little bit of depth, but not nearly the depth that I go into. Now, that depth has a lot to do with the substance and the completeness of the end result, because so many things tie into the final design presentation and the final design look and feeling and ambiance when it becomes a reality. So I'll ask some of the questions like, do you entertain? Do you give parties? Do you have smaller groups of friends that you like to hang out with? Are there any passions that you would like to be on display, as it were? How much downtime do you have? Do you like to read? Do you watch TV a lot? Do you have movies, music? All these things that factor into how the room is going to function relative to their lifestyle. So good design has got to function and then look fantastic and then feel wonderful. Okay. So they all have to work together. The function, the look, and the feeling. Kind of like a three-legged stool. That's the most stable that way. So we'll get that out of the way. And then usually we'll take a tour of the house or the rooms or whatever. And so they'll give me the guided tour. And then as I'm going through, I'm going to ask them questions that pop up in my mind, such as, is this something that you want to retain? Is this open to change? I might make any kind of comments that happen to revolve around the architecture or the way they live, and if it's workable for them or not? How much do they use the space? Could the space be used for something different? So that's a fun time to go through that and take the guided tour. And then usually we'll come back after that guided tour and I'll have more things that I want to talk about, more questions that I need answered, and we'll delve, deeper into it. And usually it's quite the exploratory time. It's definitely what I would call the discovery phase of the project. And a lot of times people discover things that, I never thought about that. I never realized that, I did that. Never realized that, I could change that. So sometimes some conceptual ideas come out at that phase because you want to create a sense of excitement, emotion, anticipation, as well as all the other good sensations that would come out of that. Now, if they have kids, I also like to interview them too. I think it's a big deal when kids get interviewed. And I really don't care if they're like 5 years old or 6 years old or older or college. It doesn't matter. And the interesting thing about this is that they feel such a sense of importance as well as, surprise and delight that they are being included, that this is more than just adults only. So it's amazing sometimes, children will say something and then the adults will realize, that's pretty important, or I never even thought about that. So I always like to give everyone a chance to voice their opinions or, so to speak, register their input. And it can be quite unique when everybody is involved, particularly the family, because they're all going to be affected by the design because they all participate in, let's say, a family room, a living room, dining room, den, what have you. So yeah, that's a real important phase that always seems to help the design process and create this excitement throughout the whole family. So it's nice to go through all that and to build a sense of expectation with the possibilities. So again, I'm trying to delve into and to pull out of them the dream because it's their dream that I want to make a reality. I am the person through which that dream will come to fruition and reality. But I will say it's one of the most enjoyable steps of the process because I'm acting like Sherlock Holmes, looking at clues, asking questions, getting answers, asking questions, getting answers, asking questions and getting answers. Because as you've heard me before on other podcasts, it's so important to know the right questions to ask in order to get the right answers, in order to deliver precisely, exactly the right results that far surpass their dreams, expectations, and aspirations. So after that is concluded, I usually will go around and take photographs of every aspect of the room, photographs of how you enter the room, the sequence of rooms that you might pass through to enter the room. And a lot of times I'll start taking photographs from the approach, like from the road, the driveway, the sidewalk, at the entry, just to be able to see the sequence of events or passages, so to speak, so that if there's a possibility in any of those things, we can create a sense of expectation and surprise by taking all these other things into consideration. But and I take pictures, hundreds of pictures on each job, every little detail. And then I start sketching up a floor plan as is. What does this room look like? What's its shape? And right here, I'm not talking about drawing up a floor plan as in space planning or furniture arrangement. I am documenting the room or rooms. I'm documenting the architecture. So I'm sketching the floor plan of the architecture, then taking measurements of the overall width and length, and then all the sub-dimensions like from the corner to an opening or a door, the width of the door, and then from the door to the corner again. And then, what are the different attributes of the room, like what type of, baseboards, casings, I'll measure casings and baseboards. I'll sketch them and then make notations of, how high they are and if there's any moldings, unique things that I want to take into consideration. Windows, depth of windows, the height, the width, ceiling height. That's always very important. just taking every dimension. And what's interesting, when you start drawing up the room and taking dimensions, you get more and more acquainted with the room, which is tremendously helpful. I mean, you can take photos of the room, and I always do, but when you go through the process of measuring, you get so much more acquainted with the room. And, it's invaluable. You're getting to know the room kind of like you got to know the client. So the room can't talk, but you can observe everything about the room, like the kind of sun that comes in, how much sunlight, if there's a lot of shade, and then location of all the outlets, because that's so important. Height of the outlet switches, where they're located, what do they do, if there's any ceiling lighting, and whether that's been located appropriately. And in many new homes, they are just done from a generalized standpoint. Most people don't do a floor plan and then do a reflected ceiling plan, which is a layout of where the recessed lighting will be. That's very rarely done. Now, if I'm involved early, I let them know that that's important to do, and that the floor plan or the spatial arrangement of the furniture determines a lot of that, as well as artwork on the walls. Now, after the room is drawn up and dimensioned, then I'll take photographs of furniture, particularly if they're going to use it. Then I'll measure the furniture: sofas, chairs, lamp tables, end tables, cocktail tables, whatever they want to reuse. And that's an important aspect, because many people don't consider that. But that goes into and gets added to anything that I might do. Now, there are times where they're not going to use anything. All that furniture is going, they're going to donate it to somebody, give it away to a charity, what have you. Then I've got a clean slate to work with. Now, if they do have furniture that they want to work with, depending if they have any fabrics there or an arm cover or whatever, I will take samples of what they have. Now, a lot of times that is not possible, and you just have to rely on your photos. And the other reason why it's good to take pictures of existing is that we might be recovering the sofa or chair or whatever. That's happened quite often. And especially where you have, let's say, people who are more short in stature or petite, just like this home that I just redid, is that furniture that was bought fits their body so well. The seat depth is just perfect for them. A lot of the new furniture that you see today, too deep, or you've got to add extra toss pillows for them to sit properly and have the proper back support. So that's why I always like to recommend high quality furniture, because it lasts forever and you can reupholster it and it still fits you. That's really important. Then before I leave, I wrap up with any other questions that have popped into my mind while I'm measuring or sketching. A lot of things will pop into my mind, and that's a great thing because we can cover all the bases before I leave. And then, of course, we talk about the budget. What kind of budget do they have? Now, most people do not have a clue as to how much things really cost at the level that they want to have included in there. So, they might say, well, you've got this much to spend, but then I say, well, but you want to accomplish this. You want this kind of function. You want it to last for 20, 30 years. You want it to hold up to all kinds of activity, and it's going to cost this much, because they're not out there shopping for this all the time. They may go into a store and say, oh, that's what a sofa costs. But, with upholstery, you don't know what kind of frame construction is underneath the cover. You don't know anything. Since when have you gone into and ripped the upholstery off of something and delved in to see what kind of cushions are there and what kind of frame, if it's a no-sag spring or a 8-way hand-tied spring, or if all of it's, kiln-dried hardwood or maple instead of plywood, is it glued and screwed and dovetailed and doweled, or is it stapled together? You don't know. And so, of course, obviously, price is indicative of that. The more quality, the more it costs. And a lot of times I'll ask them, well, what's the most you can spend? Because usually it takes more money than what they think. And so you've got to prepare them for the fact that if you really want this to be a real investment and to last a long time, it may cost them twice as much money as they figured. So sometimes that's a reality wake-up call that they haven't budgeted properly. And how can they? If they don't know really what things cost and all the other attributes of things, what do they know? Or it may be an opportunity to do something phenomenal. So they might have thought, well, we're just going to carpet this. But then they don't realize that there's an opportunity for extra layering of the space. Let's say you pick a carpet. Maybe it's unlike any carpet that they've ever had. And I'm talking about wall-to-wall carpet. So they might have had, we might do carpeting that they've never had before in terms of wall-to-wall. And then in this one case, I did Oriental rugs on top of the wall-to-wall carpeting, which was, I think, a 6-foot by 6-foot pattern repeat. And it was a cut and uncut pile, cut and loop. And it had a motif that was kind of a zebra stripe. Really very cool, unusual. So that's a high quality carpet, high quality padding. And then I put hand knotted Oriental rugs on top of that. So it was layer upon layer, which adds to a lot of depth and richness, let me tell you. So it's not uncommon and realistic that to go 50% or 100% over budget, because most clients don't have a clue about what things really cost, particularly when they add up and you've got a lot of pieces of furniture and fabrics and you have the opportunity to do this and then they love this and realize that's 3 times more expensive than most fabrics they've seen. A lot of things can enter in. And of course, you can compromise in areas where it doesn't hurt the design. That's always possible, but there's some things you cannot compromise on. You just can't. You either go or don't. So, all these things have to be balanced. So after we're done with the initial consultation, which usually happens at their home, well, let me say it this way. The in-home visit is preceded by a phone call. And sometimes that phone call can be an hour to an hour and a half. And then, we make arrangements to see the home and be there on site and ask these other questions while we're on site, because that's the most effective and efficient way to do it. So after that is done, then I'm usually drawing up the floor plan, room or rooms, to scale, and then looking at the photographs and what the needs are and the wants and the aspirations of the client. And then we start into the concept. What are the possibilities based on all the different factors that we've gone over? And so that is getting into the real creative aspect of space planning a room to take the most advantage of it. Like, say, for instance, this one client I had, they had a built-in bar. They wanted more seating. We took out the built-in bar, which created an alcove, which I found a great love seat settee to go in there. And then it was flanked by one chair, and then another chair was brought in. So there was chairs on both sides for company that was pulled in from the entryway. So I end up getting them, I think, 6 more areas of seating, benches, chairs, settee that they never knew they could do ever. So increasing the seating by 6 and not increasing the size of the room, well, that's something that they didn't even count on. They didn't even look at that. But that's why they hire me, because I look at things not from just an interior decorating design point of view, but an architectural point of view as well, because they are really a hand in glove relationship. And things go wonky. Things go wrong when you don't consider the architecture, okay? It's not decorating, it's design as far as I'm concerned. Now, I do decorate, yes, but when I'm doing a room, it's design. And if custom furniture is needed, then I design that too. So anyway, doing the space planning, that's all the ideas and the concepts and, okay, what kind of furniture, what kind of materials, leather, fabric, tapestry, is there going to be a wall covering, what kind of carpet? All these things are going on in my mind, and looking to the orchestration of the materials. In other words, putting all the different things together to create, like I say, a orchestrated symphony. And then everything that goes into it in terms of fabrics and textures and materials, is it adding up to the feeling that we need? And is it also adding up to the emotion that we need to have emanating from the space and from the room? Extremely critical. This is when you get into the robust type of design where you're getting everything: feeling, look, ambiance, which is, you got to have those three. Otherwise, in my book, it's not good design. It's decorating. It's not really design. So I go far beyond what normal people think that they need, because, well, they're coming to me as a high-end interior designer that's architecturally based, that's going to deliver something that they've never, ever experienced. Trust me, most of the time that is the situation. So they get blown out of the saddle in a very good way. Like, wow, this is amazing. Many of them have said, this is way beyond my expectations. This is way better than I thought it was going to be. And, that's celebration time right there. That's fantastic when that happens. Nothing beats that feeling for me and for them. And, as I'm going through the design phase, the floor plan, furniture selection, material selection, all of that, there are some times you come up with things that, wow, this would be perfect for this room. And then it's like, well, I don't know if there's enough in the budget for that. But if people are so elated with it, they'll find the money somewhere. Trust me, they'll find the money somewhere to get what they want, because this is their abode. This is where they live. This is where they hang out. This is where they recreate. This is where they relax. This is the haven that supports their everyday lives. So, I've had it where it's like, hey, I found something fantastic. You've got to see this. And they say, wow, we can't not take the opportunity. So most of the things that I give, the presentations that I give, I deliver one presentation. I don't deliver 3 different ways you can do this, because they're coming to me as the expert and they want the very best way that encapsulates everything that they want, need, and aspire to, and they dream of as well. So I've only had 2 times where somebody had a question about what I did, but my stuff is so well orchestrated the first time around, I never, hardly ever have anybody change anything about what I've done. One person had a question in a country club, and I answered that from the annals of history all the way back to the Egyptian times. And they said, oh, wow, if it was good enough for the kings of Egypt, it's going to be good enough for us. I said, yeah, I think so. Another case was a cardiologist had questions about some tables that were inlaid. They were a pin shell inlay in the pattern and tonality of a zebra stripe, which went well and alluded to the zebra pattern in the carpeting before we put the oriental rugs on it. But the tables were so exotic looking. And at first, he hadn't seen anything like that before, wasn't sure about it. So he said, can you find me something else? So I said, okay, I can look and see. Well, then what I came back with was a table that was made out of rattan. But when you looked at this is still an excellent choice, but most of the time my choices are so excellent that there's no comparison. If you give them second choice, they realize, oh my gosh, your first choice is so spectacular that we can't do the second choice. We got to go with choice number 1. And that's what he did. He came back and said, no, I like your first choice better. I said, well, okay, great, fantastic. But they were able to see that, I do my research quite thoroughly. I do my work in depth and I don't leave any stone unturned. So when people are allowing me to do their design, they don't have to really worry about anything except saying yes, no, and most of everything is yes, 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 and then paying the bill. That's it. Now, that takes a lot off of them. They don't have to stress. They don't have to worry. I take care of everything for them. And that's a good feeling for them. And they know that they can trust me. That is so important, the trust aspect, that they know and they find out real quick that whatever my choices are, I really substantiate them like an attorney. I mean, I will not say, well, it just looks pretty. No, I'll give them reasons like, well, it's great looking. It fits with this and this and this. It has tie-ins with that. And for reasons of this and that, I mean, I go into quite a bit of substantiation so they realize, he makes fantastic decisions based on everything holistically related to the design. So again, it's holistic, it's orchestrated interior design that counts in more ways than one, that impacts in lots of different ways, that hits all the emotions from the intellect to the emotions to the tactile sense, to the visual, to the spiritual, the whole enchilada. So sometimes it can be done all at once, and sometimes maybe it's done over a year or two and maybe 5 years, depending on the situation. But I like to plan for future events as well, future things that might be added, not where you design it and then you can't embellish it after a certain point because you did not make any provisions for it. So I'm always thinking interior design, architecture, back and forth, right and left, up and down, forward, backwards, everything. I am visualizing every bit of the space while I'm in the design phase as if I'm walking around in the space, and even walking around in the completed space, knowing what it's going to look and feel like in detail in my mind and in my imagination, as if I'm already there. Not too many people can do that. So that brings a lot of security to the client, because I let them know that I'll tell them right up front, even before the design is started, that based on our discussions, it's going to look this way, it's going to feel this way. And then when it's done, I ask them, okay, does it look the way you thought it would look? Does it feel the way you thought it would feel? And they always say, it's way more than we thought it was going to look and feel. Okay, that's what we want. That's the end result. And that's what they're paying for. Results. Results that they can be proud of. Results that they say, wow, was that ever a great investment? Or, yeah, we spent twice as much as we figured, but wow, unbelievable. We got 10 times more than we invested. So, hey, that's where it's at. That's the way I always do it. All right, that gives you a bit of summary of how I do things. Now, there's so much more complexity than what I'm able to go into. You'd have to see what I do step by step to really understand all of it. But I hope that this gives you great insight into what is necessary in order to create great interior design. Again, I hope this has enriched your life, giving you greater insight to make better decisions and better selections on who you should engage to do your interior design. And if it's me, fantastic. Would love it. So anyway, have a great day. Enjoy the beauty of it. And may your eyes be open to all the potentiality that is available to you in your life, particularly when it comes to your environment, the home that you live in. All right. Have a great day.